Welcome to the Kindness Is podcast, where we take a deep dive into the true meaning of kindness. I'm your host, Kaitlin Johnstone, the co-founder of Kind Cotton. Let's dive in. I was 13 when Columbine happened. I can remember so clearly driving to dance class the next day and our remarkable teacher holding space for us, allowing us to cry, to grieve, to be in community with one another. We wrote letters to the families. We created a piece and videotaped it. I remember thinking that there's no way something this tragic could ever take place again. How could we allow this to continue to happen to children? That was 1999. Fast forward to 2023, and so far this year, there have been 14,200 people who have lost their lives to gun violence. The number one cause of death for all children in this country is guns. I don't know about you, but I want to live in a world in which we value the safety of our children, where my daughter can run freely and be a child and not have to worry about the horrors of gun violence. I stated that the number is 14,200 people who have died in 2023, and just a few days ago, that number was only at 13,000. We have an opportunity to do something more, and I am so grateful to have Tina Strawn on this week's episode of the Kindness Is podcast to talk about Here for the Kids, to give us some true action steps that we can take to say enough is enough. We are going to be putting our children first. We are here for our children. We are here for your children. And I can't wait for you to hear this conversation so that you can feel a little bit of hope. So everyone, I have the absolute honor and privilege today to talk to Tina Strawn. She is a joy and liberation advocate, activist, author of Are We Free Yet? The Black Queer Guide to Divorcing America, and the owner and host of my all-time favorite, the Speaking of Racism podcast. I actually had a moment to tell Tina prior to this that I just feel so grateful to even be in her presence, because Speaking of Racism is the only podcast I have ever listened to, and I just value your work so deeply. The heart of her work, though, is founding and leading legacy trips, immersive anti-racism experiences where participants visit historic locations such as Montgomery and Selma, Alabama. She utilizes spiritual practices and tools to effect personal and collective change. She has been a full-time minimalist nomad since February 2020. I wish that I could say the same, since 2020, and currently lives in Costa Rica. Tina travels the globe speaking, writing, teaching, and exploring where on the planet she can feel safe and free in her queer Black woman identifying body. So Tina, I know I touched on a lot of things, but is there anything else you would like to add?
Whew, that was a lot. I don't think I've got anything to add. I appreciate you inviting me on. Thank you. And for your kind words about the podcast. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we're here with a specific mission today, and that is to talk about this unbelievable movement
Mm.
that I can't believe I'm saying this, but has only started about a month ago, called Here for the Kids. And you are a co-founder, leader of this movement. So I want to know in your words, what is Here for the Kids?
Here for the Kids is our opportunity to demand an end to American gun violence culture. As a queer Black American and someone who has divorced the states, as you referenced, is the title of my book. My heart has been broken by this country, and I think that there are a lot of people that can relate to that, what it looks like to have our hearts broken by a country that we at some point may have loved. I can say I loved it. And then I got to a point where I looked around at the evidence and the data with regards to the way that the country operates, the way it's set up, the way it was founded, the way that it continues to operate in such a racist and oppressive way today. And so my whole being and my whole life is set up to really come to terms with, what does it mean for me to be an American?
Mm.
And so even though I have divorced the country and I live now in Costa Rica, which is where I'm talking to you from, obviously my identity as an American hasn't changed, won't change. That's who I am. And so then the question remains, what now? What do we do? And while my activism has looked like a lot of different things,
Mm-hmm.
you referenced the ways that I identify myself now. I identify as a joy advocate and a liberation activist. And so my life, my work is a movement. And so now bringing Here for the Kids into the world in this beautiful way that it has combined my principles of liberation and freedom for all, and our just giving us an opportunity to tell the truth about who we are as a nation and what that means to us. How do we affect change that we believe and know needs to be made? And so that's what Here for the Kids is. It's who wants to sign up, to show up, to demand an end to gun violence culture as we know it in America today. Who wants to do that? And as the Black and brown leaders of this movement, we are specifically charging and asking and motivating and activating white women who come alongside us as our friends and allies and co-conspirators. Will you be willing to put your body on the line to demand that we ban guns and buy them back? So I know that was a very long answer, but that's just what's in me right now, is just.
No, and it's beautiful. And I want to point out something that maybe not everyone would know, having not been a part of like this core group that's really advocating for this, is that you bring such a beautiful mindfulness to meetings that we have. There is a deep connection that I feel as though we're all experiencing right now. There is a guiding force that you are the leader of, you and other women who are not on this call right now, who are an integral, amazing part of this movement as well. But when we feel grounded, we feel powerful. And I just want to mention that this is really, really heavy, and we all recognize that. And you bring such a mindful, grounding presence to that. And I really appreciate that. And I want everyone else to hear that, because this is tough stuff that we're talking about, right? We take a moment to breathe before we start diving in to everything that we're talking about. So if you're listening, just side note, but Tina also brought up a lot of amazing other things that I want to take a little bit more of a deep dive into. You said something about the history of gun violence in America. So I'm hoping that you can take some time explaining why gun violence is essentially anti-blackness and white supremacy at its core. Because I don't know that every American would recognize that, and why that is such an important part of this movement and the story of banning guns.
Mhm. So we have to consider what the Second Amendment is. We have to consider the fact that there is this document, the Constitution that was written. We have to consider what this document is. We have to consider who it was that was writing it. And then we have to look and get real clear about the moment that this was being written. So consider the Second Amendment and why people associate that with just the right to bear arms, and then there's nothing that follows that. The right to bear arms, why? So this was at a time where Black folks were enslaved. We were enslaved Africans. My ancestors were enslaved Africans, and to prevent slave militias and risings up, there had to be something put into place to give those slave owners the right to do whatever they felt like they needed to do to maintain order or the supremacy of their whiteness on the plantations where they were owning people. So we have to understand that the country, in the way that we have understood it from the beginning of its inception, was founded. The forefathers of this American institution were, so many of them, slave-owning people, slave-owning white men. And so they are going to craft the country in the way they want the country to be run, which is for their supremacy. That's what it was. So having an understanding that the Second Amendment was put into place to give rights to the slave owners to go to use weapons, to use guns, to protect to keep people from leaving, from the revolts, from the slave rebellions. And that also is rooted in the fact that as enslaved Africans, they were not seen as full human. And that is what anti-blackness is not seeing Black folks in our full humanity, and any ideology and thoughts, beliefs, attitudes, policies, principles that have that as a premise, the lacking of dignity and humanity of Black folks, that is anti-blackness. So you combine those two things, the white supremacy and the anti-blackness, and what you have is the Second Amendment. So what has resulted from that, of course, is just a wide array of what guns are used for, have been used for. So bringing us to current day and here for the kids, the reality is that hundreds of years after this document and the Second Amendment, guns are now the #1 killer of kids in all of America. So we have to begin to ask ourselves what parts of this founding document of the Constitution are no longer serving us. And at the point where the thing that was protected by the Second Amendment, being a gun, is the thing that is now responsible for killing more of our kids in this country than anything else, it's time for that amendment to be changed.
Yeah. And if we say that we love children and we say children are the future, it makes sense, right? I say to my friends and family all the time, if you told me tomorrow to give up my home, to give up, sorry, I'm going to get emotional, to give up anything for my child to not have to go to school and even participate in an active shooter drill, let alone have to experience gun violence. I was an educator. I know what active shooter drills do to children. I know the trauma that we are collectively putting on to kids. And what is that going to do 20 years down the road? How are we supporting the future? How are we, quote unquote, loving children if we can't even keep them safe when they go to school? So, yeah, it seems like a simple solution, right? But people are very tied to it due to everything that you just spoke about. So my next question being, why white women? then? If we know all that history, right? And we know, and I don't want to take away, and we talk about this a lot in here for the kids too, right? We're not taking away anything that Moms Demand has done, anything that Everytown has done, anything that all of these organizations have worked, excuse my language, their asses off in doing to stop gun violence. We're saying and, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but tell me why white women.
Yeah, we're saying and I'll answer both. We're definitely saying and because as a queer Black feminist and an activist, I believe there are multiple ways that we're going to have to be imagining and creating pathways towards liberation. And all of them are valid and all of them are necessary. So that speaks to that specifically. And why white women? Lots of reasons. And I'm not going to go in any particular order, but one of the things that I talk a lot about is that statistically and historically, white women are the least likely to be brutalized by police. And so what we understand is that all power to the people. The power is in the hands of the people. We have to gather in large numbers, in large amounts to make demands of the government. And that needs to take place. And for Black folks, and for our ancestors and the Black civil rights leaders and the radical leaders who have been marching and protesting in a variety of ways for decades. We know what happens when Black folks show up in large numbers and make demands. Can and have we affected change? Absolutely. But we also know the risk and the danger that we put ourselves in every single time we show up in the face of power to make demands for our own liberation. So this is an opportunity for white women to put their bodies and their privilege and their power on the line in fight against the system. This is a fight not only against white supremacy and anti-blackness, this is a fight against the patriarchy. This is a fight against capitalism. And it's time for white women to step up and do this work.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Because I think a lot of the times I know comments I've been getting are like, whoa, but wait, does that mean that not everyone is welcome? No, we're not saying that. People are welcome, but it's time for us to use our privilege to put our bodies on the line and do something. Because
And I'll speak to that a little bit more even, because as a nation, we have always been asking and looking to Black folks to lead, especially as it relates to injustice, because we are such experts at experiencing oppression, right? So we are the ones where the solutions come from. You want to ask, you want to figure out how to liberate an entire group of people. You ask that group of people what they need. You listen to them, you follow their lead. And Black folks have been doing that. We've been leading in this way. And this is why what we're doing with Here for the Kids is so unconventional and unexplored and radical, because I gotta be honest, I think about, what will the response be? Will there be, and to what degree will the response be different for 25,000 white women showing up at the Capitol, as opposed to if I was to ask 25 Black and brown and other folks of culture and of the global majority to show up. And we know which one of those groups has the higher risk of being brutalized. And we know, how do we know? Because we look at Selma 1965 and we look at Bloody Sunday. And you will recall this because in some of the meetings that we've had with the white women who are organizing this, as a result of our lead, I ask folks to think about the Women's March of 2017 and who went to that. And we were all, I went to that. I was in Atlanta. There were millions of people across the globe that participated in that march.
I was there.
And it was powerful and it was necessary. And I don't need to take anything away from it. However, what I've asked you all to do is to remove the images of the Women's March of 2017 from your mind as it relates to Here for the Kids, and instead focus your minds and prepare yourselves for Selma of 1965, because we are not showing up with this is not, there won't be stages, there won't be speakers, there won't be concerts, right? There won't be selfies with police officers. there's not a permit. This is white women. We are asking you to show up and to put your bodies on the line by doing this peaceful sit-in. And we recognize that there will be a police response. And what we know is that with 25 plus thousand white women, there won't be a bloody Sunday. We know that for a fact, right? And so these are just a couple of the pieces of strategy that we've used to employ, and ask our white allies to come alongside and take this one, and let's let Black folk live. Let's let Black folks sit this one out. Let's let Black folks not be the ones who are putting ourselves at the greatest risk and danger, as we already have for so long, as we do just being Black in this country, right? So this is another level of people's personal anti-racism journeys. And what does that mean to you to show up to fight white supremacy? This is that taking action. This is that moving beyond listening and learning, which many white folks have been doing for several years now. So now here's the application of, well, what have you been listening to? Who have you been listening to? What have you been learning? And are you ready to show up for this moment right now in Denver to stand against white supremacy and anti-blackness?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you touched upon it, because I was going to ask you to share. Tell us, Tina, this is your Selma, because that's something that you've been saying from the beginning of this. And I think that that's so powerful to hear as a white woman. That is extremely, extremely powerful. So I'm happy that you brought that up. I also want to know, we've been talking a lot about it, about the history, about who's involved, about what it is, but can you tell us what the direct action is? Because we've mentioned it a little bit, but what do we need anyone who hears this podcast to go and do themselves, and then go tell every other white woman that they know out there to do?
I love that prompt. I love that call to action. Yes, here is the ask. We're asking for 25,000 white women, white accomplices, our white friends, white moms, to show up at the Capitol in Denver, Colorado on June 5th at 5 a.m. to demand that Colorado Governor Jared Polis sign an executive order to ban all guns and buy them back. And we stay until he does. That's it. It is quite simple and also quite complex what we're asking. But when we consider, again, bringing it always back to the focus, why are we doing this? Because guns are the number one killer of kids. If we would consider what would be successful gun legislation, then along with all of the legislation and the bills that have been signed to regulate guns, if we were going to call those things a success, then we would have to see the decline of the number of kids being killed by guns. I mean, let's just call it what it is. If I am doing these things and checking these boxes that I am a proponent of gun control, and if that was working, then the numbers of the kids dying by guns would be going down. And what we have is the opposite. It's actually interesting. And I'm going to say this because this is a pillar of this work, that even though at a time when gun legislation is at its highest that it's ever been, let's consider that Columbine happened 24 years ago. And since Columbine, we've had Sandy Hook, and we've had more others than I can name.
Yeah.
And what we know is, as a result of school shootings increasing in number, the number of gun legislation and gun control laws has also increased, as people have taken this on as a crisis and an epidemic, if you will. But what we're seeing is that with more and more legislation, we still continue to have that rise and that climb in the deaths of kids due to guns. So this is what brings us to this moment. And this is why this is different. And this is why it's unexplored and revolutionary, is because we are no longer saying, well, let's do a little bit less gun over here and a different kind of gun over there. We're saying all the guns, everybody, ban them, buy them back.
Yeah. I mean, it needs to happen. Another great point that Syra has spoken a lot about is, well, if we're going to do all this extreme gun control in, say, blue areas, right? And then we're loosening gun control in the red areas, all we are doing is making us who live in quote unquote more progressive states sitting ducks.
Mm.
Like, it's not hard for me to drive from Maryland to Virginia to Georgia to Florida. It's very, very easy and accessible to hop in a car and go anywhere across state lines. So my next question to you is, we're starting in Colorado with the hopes of what? Can you share that? Because I think that is a question that people go, well, so what? Like, Colorado, it happened. Like, kudos to you if it happens there, but what is the big picture? Then what?
The big picture is that Here for the Kids is a national movement with a state focus. And so we looked at, who do we target? We already know we aren't going to target the red states because they're very, very busy, successfully, might I add, banning books, banning Black history, banning trans people. So we're not likely going to get any traction in the red states. We're going to now focus on the blue states. So now, looking at all the blue states, let's look at ones that have the highest rate of school shootings. And we have Colorado, in addition to a lot of the contacts inside of our internal network that we have in Colorado. That's why we chose Colorado first. And this is, to be quite honest, the perfect starting ground for what this blueprint, if you will, that we are starting with Here for the Kids. We target this one state. We put all of our force into this one state. We ask people to show up, obviously, from all across Colorado, but from all across the country. We're asking folks to get their flights, get in their cars, bring the homies. Everybody, we're going to Denver. We're going to sit our asses. We're not moving until Governor Polis signs this executive order, right? And then the next thing is, we're going to the other blue states. We're going to the other states where we know we have some, where as you referenced, the organizations that have been doing this for a long time, where there are relationships, where there is an awareness around the gun violence culture as a problem. And folks that, on paper say they want to change and fix that and do something about that. This is what we are now demanding that be done. And then from there, what we really, here's ideal. Let me just give away the whole plot here. Yeah. Ideally, Governor Polis knows that we're coming, knows what the demand is, and signs this executive order to ban guns and buy them back before we even get there. And that's really, at this point, what we need. When we talk about leadership inside of the government, we need that first governor. Who's going to be that first governor who's going to raise their hand and say, I am going to be the outlier. I'm going to be the pioneer of this because I have the imagination to see into the future and I want to be on the right side of history. So let me be the governor that goes down in history as the governor who signed the executive order to ban guns, the very first one. This has never happened before. So that's the plan. That's ideally, we don't have to even go to Denver on June 5th. Governor Polis will sign and be like, oh, I actually would like to have my summer. I would not like for a bunch of thousands of white ladies to ruin my summer. So let me go ahead and sign this and y'all can stay home and save me and my state government some headache, because it's going to be a headache when y'all show up on June 5th, right? So that's what we want him to do. Or we would love, and this is what we are beginning the process of now, reaching out to the other governors so that they know what's coming. We're not doing this in secret. We are coming for you. We are coming for our kids, for everyone's kids. So who's to say that Governor Gavin Newsom in California doesn't raise his hand and say, I'll be that first governor in the country to sign this executive order. We're giving it, it's actually a gift going to Colorado, let's be honest, because we're giving to Governor Polis and being like, would you like to be the next guy in the history book that was on the right side of history? Or do you want to be George Wallace? Which we've been talking about that in our social media reels lately as well. Like, he can choose to ignore us and be known as a George Wallace, but we're hoping and believing that he's going to listen to the thousands and thousands and thousands upon white women that are going to show up in Denver, that he's going to say, I'm signing this. And then we move on and take it to all the blue states until we eventually take it across the country.
Yeah. And as a mom of a young child who brought her child into this world 2 months before the world shut down, and all the other things that have come since then, this is giving me hope. So if
Mm.
someone is listening to this, I need you to hear, because it can feel very isolating, very scary, very draining. And this is giving me hope for
Me
the
too.
first time in a long time. And I think it's a really important piece to this, because this is different. And not to say that all the other things, as I mentioned before, have not been beautiful and wonderful, but this feels different. And it is different, you know? Um, Syra, again, has said a lot that, and for those of you who don't know, Syra is another one of the leaders of this who is incredible as well. And she has said many times, we've lost our imaginations.
Mhm.
Like, we just need to think critically. What can we do? And I mean, it could be that I'm a little biased, but I think we've really come together with a solution that we're hoping someone will listen to, for
Yeah,
sure.
a lot of us think so, for sure.
Yeah. So, Tina, before we wrap this up, I want to know a couple of really important things. First of all, we said we know exactly what we need, right? But where can people go to let us know that they are coming? Where can they go to find out more information about how long they may need to plan their trip? I mean, we have all of this info now up on the website, frequently asked questions, et cetera, et cetera. Where can people go? What should they do the moment they press stop on this podcast?
They should go to hereforthekids.com. That's the number 4, and hit the button that says, I am committed. I will be there. RSVP, whatever the buttons say, they all might say different things, but it's all
Mhm.
about the same thing, which is that you are going to be there and that we can expect that you will be there in Denver on June 5th. So go to the website. That's the big thing I want you to do. And also go to our Instagram page, Here
Mhm.
for the Kids Action, and read so that you can get more familiar with all of what's happening, where to get connected, learn about some more of us, those of us who are leading it, learn some unfortunate but real gun stats. Like that's a really great place to stay connected with the daily taking place items that are happening inside the
Mhm.
movement. And please, by all means, share what we're doing. Take any of our posts and share it, repost it, remix it, whatever you want to do. But we are really hoping that everyone will help get the word out. And, not to speak to what we talked about earlier with this specific request being able-bodied white women, white accomplices, our white friends, white moms. That's who we're asking to be the ones putting your bodies on the line, instead of the marginalized community who is at greater risk and greater danger in participating in civil disobedience like this, right?
Mhm.
So then what can everyone else do? What we want the disabled community, we want the LGBTQIA plus community, we want all different racial groups to participate as well. But we are asking for you folks, since we can't guarantee to keep you safe, we are actually asking that you don't show up, but that you instead participate with the remote campaign that we are putting a lot of heart and energy and effort into. That's going to be as robust as the on the ground action. And this is just one of those times where it's for different folks to show up and do different things.
I can't tell you how much I'm happy you brought that up. I feel as though you're reading my mind because, as I said to you, please tell everyone where they can go, what they could do, how they could show up. I'm thinking, Kaitlin, we need to make sure that we understand if you are chronically ill or disabled. This is something that we are working on. As you said, we have a very robust campaign for you to still participate. We don't want anyone to feel as though they are not a part of this movement. And I think there were some questions about that in the very beginning. So I'm so incredibly happy that you brought that up.
Yeah, and I'll speak to that a little bit more. You know, Black folks, you're in choice. If you choose to show up, okay. We just ask that you, number one, you're aware of why we're specifically asking white women. And number two, that you consider your safety and consider the fact that as the leaders of this movement, we want to prioritize the safety of Black and brown bodies and other bodies of culture in the global majority. And that is for us to not be there. That is for us to support in other ways. And also, if I'm Syra, I'm telling you to donate also, because it costs a lot of money to have a movement that of this size and magnitude, especially over this short amount of time. It's like, website, who's paying for that? And mailing list, who's paying? Like, it's been a lot that we have done over these past few weeks. And like Syra says, also, we've gone beyond planning some weddings. This is putting together a whole country in the matter of basically 3 weeks.
Yeah. It sounds almost absurd when you say that out loud, but it also sounds very like we are powerful. We can do this.
Hell
And that is something that I need to hear you say, because it's been so reassuring every time I see a post on social media. I'm wondering if you know what I'm getting at. We started with we can.
We will.
Yes. Right?
Okay.
I mean,
Yes.
not all, yeah, we can
Yes.
and we will. We can
Yes.
and we will. And that in and of itself has been providing me hope, because we can. We have. We have.
And we can and we have and we will. It is this having this bigger imagination, and taking ourselves out of this, small and narrow-mindedness of asking for less than what we really want. And what we really want are all the guns gone. That's what we want. We want for our kids to be able to go to school and not have to do these drills. The way that I don't know, you look kind of young, so maybe not you, but the way that it was when I was in school, we did not have such a thing, did not exist.
I never did. I never did.
And so we just are daring to have a lot of a bigger imagination around what we can demand.
Yeah, for sure. We are in a mission of redefining kindness. And I think that you have already spoken to all of the ways in which Here for the Kids is doing that. But before we leave, I would love to hear your definition of kindness.
Well, it's good to hear that you feel that I've been kind during this podcast.
That is true kindness.
Yeah. I feel like
This
what
is
we
true
have,
kindness.
our exchange has been a kind exchange. And what I will tell you is I listened to your definition of kindness before we got on this call, and I was trying to think about mine and formulate mine. And I decided that, number one, I really like your definition of kindness. That's the first thing, which is rooted in justice, grounded in action, and open to change. Is that how you would define it? Ways. So I am I'm going to say that I would love to piggyback on your definition, but I would also love to read a little poem that I wrote in my book, Are We Free Yet? The Black Queer Guide to Divorcing America. And the purpose of this is to sit in contrast with the definition that we have come to, that you offered, that kindness is. And this is a poem about kindness and anger. Anti-racism is not about kindness. Anti-racism is about Black lives. I am not a kindness educator. I am not a kindness facilitator. I am not even a kindness advocate when it comes to anti-racism. I am an anti-racism educator. My work is about Black lives. I am an educator, facilitator, and advocate for Black lives. I am a Black life. This is what qualifies me. I am a Black life. That's what my work is. I am a Black life. My life is my work. My work is my life. My life and my work are about liberating my Black life and liberating all Black lives. My work is not about kindness. My work is not about white people. My work is not about white people being kind to Black people. There are too many white people focused on kindness and not focused on Black lives. There are too many white people focused on having tough conversations about being kinder to everyone instead of being focused on saving and securing justice and liberation for Black lives. Anti-racism work is not about kindness. The work I do is not about niceness. The work I do is not all about all races just being kind and nice to each other. Fuck kind and nice. My work is about saving, valuing, honoring, respecting, centering, healing, fighting for, demanding justice for, and liberating Black lives. I do not host yoga trips to Montgomery about kindness. I do not host anti-racism trips to Montgomery about kindness. I do not host trips to Montgomery about how all lives matter. I host yoga trips to the lynching memorial in Montgomery. I host anti-racism trips to the fucking lynching memorial. There is no kindness in lynching. Quit talking to me about being nice.
Yeah.
That simply being offered as a contrast, because I am a believer that there can be multiple things true at one time. And notice that was a poem that's entitled A Poem About Kindness and Anger. So just as the radical queer Black feminist that I am, I wanted to bring both the kindness element, the anger element, and ask that everyone sit with that truth also, the other side of kindness and what's being asked. And so that also speaks to why white women, like, it is both true that kindness is something that you and I believe in, and that needs to be more in the world. And it is also true that in and on an anti-racist journey, it's focusing on our lives and it's focusing on justice, which is why I came back and I looked at your definition and I said, this would be my definition as well. So thank you for that, Kaitlin, and thank you for letting me read that little excerpt in my book.
No, I absolutely love it. And that's the thing, right? Kindness has been weaponized for centuries. And it's almost like a taking back of kindness, a call to all people to take a look at what they have traditionally seen as simple pleasantries and take a much deeper look at that and change what we have portrayed as kindness historically. So I think that your poem completely exudes kindness. I think that your poem is what kindness is.
Yeah, and I feel it more as it walked in that poem, the way it showed up in that poem. And please get the book so you can read the context as to why that random poem about kindness and anger is there. But I think they go hand in hand there. And really, to speak to what you said about this movement being a movement of kindness, that's because it's centered in justice.
Yeah.
That's because it's centered in what's right and what's true. And that's the kindness in this.
Yeah. And that's what it should be.
Yeah.
Okay, before we go for real this time, everyone, can you tell everyone where they can follow you, where they can get your book, where, because we've been so focused on here for the kids, but people, there is a reason that I have been following Tina for quite some long time and love the work that she is doing. So please let folks know how they can support you.
Absolutely. You can go to our podcast that you referenced, Speaking of Racism. That's available anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts, just in audio form. And you can also go to Legacy Trips on Instagram. Those are the 3-day anti-racism trips that I lead and have been leading for the past several years to Montgomery and to Selma, Alabama. So follow us there, and you can go to the link in our bio to get more information about those trips, when the next upcoming dates are, and how to register. You can follow me on my personal Instagram, which is Tina_Strawn_life. And you can also buy my book. I would love for folks to buy and read my book, Are We Free Yet? The Black Queer Guide to Divorcing America, available at all major retailers. You can get it online at Amazon. You can walk into your local Barnes & Noble and get it. You can even download it on Spotify. It's an audiobook. You can get it on Audible or the other, like Libro FM and all of those folks. And it's me reading it. So it's actually quite an enjoyable experience. So that's how folks can follow me, my work. And thank you so much for your kind words, Kaitlin. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You know, I don't know that we could end this episode of this podcast any better than with Tina's poem. So I'm just going to leave you with this. Remember, as you step into this week, that kindness is action. We can, we are, and we will continue to do something to put an end to this horrific gun violence that is happening in this country.